You're now live.
Okay, we are now live. This is the Committee of Conference on H360. And normally we'd go through what we did, but I understand that the House has a proposal of amendment for us.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not familiar with Matthew Grimo.
he is the committee staff for House Energy and Technology.
All right, Matthew, nice to see you. Thank you.
He's not a reporter.
Yeah, Senator Cummings, what I was going to suggest was, typically I think we do a side-by-side version of the two bills. And Representative Pat, Representative Sibilia, and I have been working over the weekend with Maria going through the bill. And I think we're perfectly happy to work off the Senate version and then, make some proposed changes just based on that. I mean, I think a lot of the themes that we worked on in the House were carried over in the Senate Finance Committee's version. So we're happy to work there. And then we can save ourselves 45 minutes of doing a kind of a side-by-side walkthrough of the two bills.
I think that
I would just add to what Representative Briglin just said, is it's my sense that other than the proposals we now are presenting to you for to amend your version of the bill, what that basically means is that we concur with the other changes that the Senate did, except for what we're presenting to you today.
Okay. So it probably would, given that time is getting to be very difficult, if we could get to your proposal, and
Sure.
then we will have to find a time when we can get together.
Right.
To go
well, I mean,
over
that was the other thing that, knowing that as this week goes along, time is going to get really scarce for some people on this conference committee. I'm hopeful we can get to some resolution on these things early in the week.
It would be good because I'm not going to get miscellaneous tax out until Wednesday.
Okay.
So, we're going home Friday.
I guess I would ask Maria and Faith what the best way is to share this document. I don't know if it's posted to the website or I don't feel the need to share screen. I think members can walk through it.
I'm posting it right now.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I will give it
And I will say a number of these things are some typos that Maria helped us identify, and I would say small scale things. Some of the other ones obviously are more meaty.
Okay, let me update.
It's not up yet.
Yeah, it's not.
Will it ultimately be under today on the finance?
It will be. Yes, it's just clicking the button and it is saving it now. But it does take a few minutes to show up on our webpage.
Yeah, Faith, I'm sorry I didn't send that to you sooner.
That's
I just
okay.
sent it to Faith as Representative Briglin was talking, so.
Well, I will also say that we put a dent into Maria's weekend in working on this. So I really appreciate. I want to formally thank Maria for working on this. And you'll see the timestamp is as late as I can't remember what it is, but 8 a.m. this morning.
Updating. Yeah.
I see it up on our webpage now.
Okay.
Draft 1.1 House Conferee's proposal.
So, Ann, I'll wait until you let me
Yeah,
know that
I've
you've done it.
got. Okay. Yep, it's up. All right, let's walk through it.
Okay. So this is the, it says House Conferee's proposal at the top of the page, and it's got an 8:18 a.m. timestamp from this morning. And the first change is just it's a typo. Essentially, it's on page 6 in the intent section. Since we're no longer doing the Community Broadband Authority, that should be board. That's highlighted in yellow.
I noticed
se-
that when I was presenting it.
Yeah, so, well,
Good job not
Read it
bringing that
incorrectly.
up. So everything until that, could you just orient us to, we would expect any change to be in yellow, or what are we?
yes, the changes that are proposed here are all in yellow.
Thank you.
Okay,
On page 7, and some of these are quite small, but we just want to get them on the table. On page 7, in the definition section, there's some changes that we would propose. The second definition of broadband service, the term mass market seemed confusing to us, especially relative to some of the small scale markets that we're dealing with in Vermont and small telcos. And so we would propose getting rid of that. The term community is a term that we would like to eliminate. We replace it later on with the term municipality. And as we went through this, community is a term that we used in our bill in the House. And so I would kind of put this in the framework of our bad. It's an ambiguous term. And I think the Senate tried to salvage this term with some definition around it. We didn't even have a definition in the House bill, but I think we'd like to jettison this term and move to the term municipality, which has a definition in state statute, which we pull in here. Did you have a question, Chris?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I don't.
yeah, no, I'm trying to
Normally
take
I'd-
notes and
I'd-
watch
I'd-
you and watch my other screen.
Normally I'd elbow the chair and say, may I have a question? So this seems straightforward, but when you define it, when you substitute municipality, we have also taken pains to extend grant eligibility to small telecoms that are wed to serving the whole area. And that's where community, I think, Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, that we linked that. So basically, under our construct, Franklin Telecom, and we like to pick on them because Senator Brock's here.
Well, you
has
got
to-
Waitsfield,
Waitsfield has to
fine.
serve the whole community, and somehow we have to make sure that we're being clear. So I wonder if you've thought of that, or do we need to rethink?
Yeah, and I think that concept is preserved in the definition of a universal service plan, where you also called out small telecommunications carriers. And that definition of universal service plan carries out throughout the bill as you have to have a universal service plan. But this definition doesn't obligate small carriers to have that plan for more than their footprint. So I think it is captured there, but that's something we can talk more about. We were really concerned about
page 9. I'm seeing that on page 9. I agree.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we were really concerned about the ambiguity of the term community and who defines, what that geographic area is, how limited it is. And so we came up with some horror story scenarios as to how that could be interpreted. So anyway, that's the proposal there.
We did spend a long time trying. I think
can
we
imagine.
all will know it when we see it, but putting it into a definition was challenging. So
Yeah.
taking
So-
off where we left. Okay.
Our next change is definition number 4, which is for eligible provider. And this change was made really in the context of trying to be consistent with how we have described this later in the bill. So this is something that my committee and the House worked a lot on. And this is a definition that is pulled forward from the VITA portion of the bill. And, I would say philosophically, how we look at this definition is it actually opens the door wider to allow more ISPs to participate as eligible providers. And at the same time, I think it narrows the focus on requirements that CUDs be involved in all those situations. So again, this is language that's currently in the bill in the VITA section, and we pulled it forward here. And I believe in the VITA section, it's for the definition of an eligible borrower, and we pulled it forward here for an eligible provider. And the other thing that we changed, I believe in this definition, no, actually that's the same. So we
This
carried
would-
forward. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This would require that one of the community telecoms had to join with, they couldn't just come in, and Waitsfield was one. Franklin's only got 9 miles left. Why do they have to go through all the rigmarole of, setting up partnerships and, that when, if they got the grant, they could be stringing fiber, they've got trucks, they've got employees, they could get it out possibly this year.
Yeah,
They know their poles.
and I think that is covered in C for an internet service provider that's working for a non-CUD community. They would still have to be working in concert with that community itself to
Okay.
provide universal service. But for a Waitsfield, for example, if they were providing service in, I'm not sure what all their towns are, but a town like. I
They're
don't
in
know.
Moortown.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Moortown is part of a CUD, but if they're not, they
Yeah, I
could
believe they are.
serve Moortown as long as they're, kind of working in concert with a Moortown.
Okay. Senator Brock.
What about the situation with a company such as Franklin Telephone that is near Universal in Franklin, but also provides some service in 2 adjacent communities, I believe Berkshire and Sheldon? How would they be affected?
Are
But he's-
Berkshire and Sheldon, I don't
And
have the
they're
map in
part
front
of,
of me.
yeah, they're part of the Northwest CUD,
Yeah, well, my
but they have
presumption,
historically done service in some locations in those towns also.
yep. And I think according to this language, Senator Brock, they would be able to qualify for grant funding in a circumstance where they are coordinating that work through a CUD and that it does not impair the CUD plan. Actually, that's language that you folks put in the bill, that it
Mhm.
doesn't impair the plan that the CUD has for that area, whether it's Berkshire or Sheldon. I think, and then obviously they can do that work without a grant. Obviously, this doesn't preclude them from doing that. But in order to qualify for a grant, I think that they would have to coordinate that work and demonstrate, and this is language that you all put in the bill, that that work doesn't impair the universal service plan that CUD has.
And I would just remind ourselves about how CUDs are formed and how towns are formed. And so if a municipality is part of a CUD, that means that the governing entity of that municipality, the elected leaders of that municipality, have said, we want to work to coordinate universal coverage to the last mile in our town with this CUD. And if they have not, then they have not. But I would just sort of add that in. I think in Franklin, they are not. I think they're part of the study area. Oh, well, actually, I'm looking at a March 22 CUD, and I think it's changed.
Mhm.
So.
I think our testimony was they've got 9 miles left and there's 2
Yep.
houses on those 9 miles. But I think we're all trying to do the same thing, which is to make sure that Waitsfield doesn't do downtown Warren and then leave all those nice sugar bush homes up in the mountains unserved. I think that's not likely, but you get up into the back roads of Moortown, it could be. So we don't want, we don't want the cherry picking of along Route 100. So Senator Pearson.
Yeah, I appreciate what's the attempt here. I mean, we have as I think of it, the House bill initially drove all the money through the CUDs, any grant money through the CUDs. We preserved that, but offered a carve out for smaller telcos that were provided they were serving everyone in their territory and not basically at odds with the CUD. So we didn't blow the doors open by any chance, but we did make a fundamental shift that the money did not have to all go through a CUD. This seems to bring it back through the CUDs with this one exception under C, service provider working in conjunction with a municipality that was not part of a CUD. So what do you picture here? What does that mean? If I'm a small telco applying for a grant, how do I demonstrate that I'm working in conjunction with the municipality?
Well, I think there are instances, actually both in Vermont and outside of Vermont, where municipalities are working with private ISPs in a conjunction where they are actually providing universal service in a town. And I think some of those negotiations are ongoing right now with private providers working with CUDs to take on part of their universal service plan. So, I think it's difficult to kind of prescribe here what those partnerships, what those relationships would look like. But I actually think that even B leaves the door open pretty wide for, how that work could be done in conjunction. And in fact, I think an obvious instance of this is where a CUD would be the recipient of a grant, build fiber, have some sort of lease arrangement with a private ISP. The private ISP would do the drops to the homes, and so would own actually some of the capital equipment involved in building out. So it really would be a partnership where the ISP has the consumer relationship, if you will, or the residential relationship, kind of from the line that goes by the house into the home, and the municipality, whether it's a CUD or a non-CUD town, has more of the infrastructure part of the relationship. So I think in that instance, it still saves the private ISP the capital expense of building, the major part of the infrastructure, and preserves the ISP's ability to have the residential consumer relationship.
But maybe that's describing the vision in B.
Yep.
But I've also not. That was something in the House construct that I didn't quite understand, which was, why wouldn't we just, from the state point of view, consider that a grant to the CUD? It's sort of the sub level, it seems to me, of we want, and we set it up where the CUD's contract with the ISP is part of the grant process. We need to understand that that's a consumer protection and taxpayer protection. But you seem to have that same business relationship, but then the grant money going straight to the ISP. And is the logic what you're describing that actually the ISP may own it may be in an agreement, but not an ownership structure with the CUD? Is that why that's important?
I don't think B precludes an ISP from owning the infrastructure.
No, I don't. What my point is, I'm not sure B is necessary because the grant just flows through the CUD. So why do we need to, why would we grant right to an ISP that's working with a CUD as opposed to just grant to the CUD and have them push it through? It's sort of like if I'm building my house and the bank doesn't write the check to the lumberyard, the bank writes the check to my contractor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I guess what I would say is, and maybe I'm repeating myself now, I don't know if B precludes having that ISP being in a working in conjunction with an ISP and actually being the grant recipient and building infrastructure itself. I'm trying to think of what that construct would look like, in New Hampshire. And again, this is a different situation, but there are instances where municipalities are partnering with private ISPs. The private ISPs ultimately own the infrastructure. The municipalities are borrowing to help build that infrastructure. So there's we may have talked about this before. This is something Consolidated has done with a number of individual towns.
Number
Would
of
just
towns in
add-
Vermont that have internet service. It may only be 25.3, but there's a number out there that have Peacham, Craftsbury, Greensboro are all on. They have an agreement, I assume, with a private provider, but they're kind of like islands if you look at the map. And now their CUDs they're in it. I mean, this is an evolving landscape. And I think we're never going to get all the iterations that will come up as we work. I think what we're trying to do is prevent either a big telecom or a big ISP from coming in and just using grant money to take all the flat roads in the CUD district and leave them as we've seen in the past. But there's also the recognition that especially with the telecoms, they might get fiber up this year while the CUDs are still organizing themselves in that area. And so we're trying to, I think, find that balance, which is difficult to put into words when there's so many things, different
Yeah, no,
scenarios.
I think there's a variety of different iterations that these
Yeah.
partnerships can take. And I think
Mr. Chair.
B is trying to acknowledge that. I'm sorry, Laura.
I actually, on B, I would note that, the work that we have done, kind of standing up these CUDs and moving folks forward has put a lot of CUDs, a lot of regions in the same place, which is needing help with financing this build out, which is a big part of the work that we all are trying to do. And B actually also helps to preserve some flexibility in getting that done. There are any number of ways that the financing, we're providing funding here, but there are other financing tools that may come into play. And so it helps to preserve that accountability and coordination with the CUDs, but also to provide maximum flexibility in terms of financing tools that might be used.
Well, and one of those financing tools is the VITA program, which is where
Right.
this language was pulled from.
Right.
Okay.
It looks
Yeah.
like,
I just want to add to what Laura just said. To me, the term "in conjunction with" is deliberately broad, because we understand that there are going to be in different places different relationships between a CUD and another entity. That other entity may already own infrastructure. So in one case, the most logical relationship would be that entity continues to own new infrastructure to serve a certain area. In another area, that's not going to be the situation. So in conjunction with means there has to be a real understanding between the entity, whoever it is, and the CUD, but it can be different arrangements in different places based on the situation.
so just help me understand though. In B, it's still linked back to the CUD. The CUD is sort of structured here as the regulator. So why would we ever not just put the money to the CUD and have them figure out their own affairs the next level down? I'm not sure I care, but I'd like to understand. You seem to be making a distinction there that I don't understand. Why wouldn't we just give the money to the CUD, then they sort out their private arrangements, which is what you've all described?
I'm going to make a suggestion because Senator Brock needs to leave.
Okay.
And if we go through the rest of this, I think this one, we struggled in our commit. We're struggling with wording, and we can do that. But let's find out if we've got another spot that we're going to struggle over.
Okay,
And
so I will try and hustle then to accommodate Senator Brock's schedule. On page 8, as I'd mentioned earlier, we add a definition for municipality. In definition 10, I think that's just is a typo that we had fixed. Although in B on 10, there was just a question mark as to why that language was necessary, the not more than 3 counties, as to, who are we carving out here? And we didn't understand how that was additive, frankly.
I think we were trying, I think we were looking at Waitsfield, Champlain Valley Telecom, trying to keep it small. So it wasn't AT&T, but
I see. Okay, so
but that
maybe
and
there's more
I-
we
the,
maybe
the,
there's more
tel-
we've
the
got to understand there.
communications carrier might have come from the gentleman down south,
Duncan.
Duncan. He has strong fiber. He's a cable TV provider. He has strung fiber to 2/3 of his district. He was concerned that we would allow Consolidated to come in and take the rest of his district. And I don't know if he's telecom or comm, but I think that's where the communications as
Yeah.
opposed to.
So, Madam Chair, in that instance, I would just point to that specific provider being a classic case of what we call donut hole provisions, where, we have villages that have been covered and the large areas outside have been uncovered. And I think that specific cable provider is concerned about getting overbuilt in any number of ways. I would also note in that specific instance that that area is actually mislabeled on our state telecom maps as covered with 25.3 service. And in fact, that provider is providing 11.2 service, I believe. So,
But I would just point out that this all flows from, we popped it out of only the CUDs under strict conditions. And somewhere along the lines, we realized, oh, these are not all telecoms. Some of them are cable providers. So we didn't want to go to the biggest options. So we sort of randomly picked 3 counties, but to try to gobble in some of them, they either come through the CUDs or are not competing with the CUDs, right? That's been our entire structure.
I think that's what we're all trying to say.
Yep. And and this is something I think we've got to toggle on in the next day, because I'm not so intimidated by the large telcos as long as they are working hand in glove with the CUDs.
Yeah.
So,
But our bill didn't preclude that at all.
yeah, no, I understood.
We're just trying to find the right words. And as far as I'm concerned, this is such a growing and fluid. I mean, the technology changes as we speak. That we're going to be back making adjustments next year as reality plays out and we find out where the holes are and where the needs are. We are never going to get it 100% right the first time. It's just too big and too complex.
So
And-
on page 9, I had already mentioned the change we made in universal service plan by inserting the word municipality instead of community.
Yep.
Farther down on page 9, in the description of the community broadband fund, there's a discussion of what the funding sources are for the fund, what money goes into that fund. We'd like to add what subsection 7523B is it's the 0.4% of the universal service fund that we had in Act 79 that we passed 2 years ago. And that's money that supports the broadband, the rural broadband.
Rob.
Right. But it's also money that I think is important in that in 2024, this fund is going to have expended its federal dollars, and there is no sustainable there's no sustainable revenue source to support the work of this fund. That 0.4% currently is somewhere in the $800,000 to $900,000 a year range.
Yeah.
And it could support the operations of this fund. And it's actually a diminishing revenue source, but appropriately, we think it belongs here.
Okay.
On page 10, number 5, in the Senate bill, there was an up to $1.5 million of the fund's resources can be used for the operational expenses of the board. We would like to leave a little more flexibility there. First, we didn't think $1.5 million was enough to support the work of the board over the next 10 years or the next 8 years. But
Yeah, I don't think we were thinking in that big a time frame. I think we were thinking
is that
more
an annual
like
number?
2 to, yeah.
Okay. So that's a different.
Yeah,
that's a
we
different-
weren't thinking in 8-year
Got it.
segments.
Nonetheless, we'd like to give the board the flexibility as to what their operating budget should be. We also added a C, which is to clarify that the expenditures from the fund need to be authorized by the board. There was some language in here where there was some ambiguity, and we wanted to be crystal clear here. This is a small change, but 8084, the title of that section is Management of the Fund. I think really what this describes is the Vermont Community Broadband Board, and that would be a better title. Page 11, we would propose increasing the size of the board from 3 members to 5 members. The House had recommended 7, so this is in between. We would add 1 member as an appointee, an additional appointee of the governor, and we would add a new appointee from VCUDA, from the Vermont Communications Union District Association. In the House bill, VCUDA, I think, was appointing 2 members of the 7-member board. We would add them as appointing 1 member here. And just a reminder, these are not folks who are current CUD employees or members. Per section 3, these have to be, folks who have who are independent of interests in any telco or CUD.
That was our concern, is
Yep.
that they could be deciding on grants that they had a vested interest in.
Yeah, and I think
All right, we'll look at it.
subsection 3 precludes that.
And could I just understand, interest is pretty straightforward, right? I'm financially interested. If I serve on a board of a CUD, I don't get any remuneration, I don't believe. So are we sure that that's clear? Or maybe Maria could figure that out for us to make sure.
It's a good catch. I think we've got to look back at the language in the House bill, because I think the House bill specifically stated that that a member of this board couldn't be, simultaneously a member or have an interest in the work of the CUD.
I think on page
it
11,
says section
subdivision 3. Yep.
that it cannot include members of a governing board of a communications union district.
Yep.
We'll take a look at that.
So it clearly excludes.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, I'm probably getting back too far. We'll take a look at that. I think,
Okay.
again,
On page
Understand.
12, in paragraph 4, we have the chair being elected by the board as opposed to appointed by the governor. So that was a governance change. On page 15, at the bottom of the page, just added some language clarifying that the rural broadband technical assistance specialist, that it's the one that was created in that section of statute. And at the bottom of the page, the executive director is authorized to hire additional full-time employees. It seemed overly prescriptive to define how many employees that the executive director could hire. So we'd prefer more flexibility there.
okay, the rural broadband technical, yeah, Rob.
Yep.
Because several times the commissioner has mentioned, no one's asked Rob, and she's not sure he'd want to switch jobs. And then we found out, you know, we're only funding this board for X number of years, and that has less job security than an ongoing. And we left him in his job funded by the connectivity, you know, the expansion, just so it's the supervision that's moving, but he's got the same pay security he's got now. And I think we all recognize that next year we have some serious work to do on that fund, because it's shrinking. It's not growing to meet the need. And we've kind of bailed out E911 for a year or two, but that's probably going to be a major piece of work next year.
Yep.
We're doing the same thing, I gather. All right.
So I think the next change that we highlight is on page 19. And to orient you, this is in the section of the bill that describes the construction grant program. So paragraph E basically makes this portion much more explicit and strengthens it. That the board shall not award a grant to an eligible provider. So again, here's that term, who is not a communications union district, unless the board determines that the provider's universal service plan does not conflict with or undermine the deployment plans of an existing CUD. So, you know, some of this is clarifying, some of it is strengthening.
Okay.
The next paragraph, you know, it's not really a substantive change, but it clarifies that the grant is going to an eligible provider specifically. And in the following paragraph, we want to be clear that the proposed project is not only a cost-effective method for providing broadband service to the unserved and unserved, but also that it's capable of speeds of at least 100 download and 100 upload. That it's not just kind of any old project. And kind of further to that point, and this is something that Maria pointed out to us, and it's in blue highlight on page 20, which is in this kind of line extension, kind of short-term program, if you will, we are allowing, as the Senate drafted this, it would allow for service of 25.3, which is not allowed in the federal guidelines for ARPA. It's got to be at least 20, actually, it got to be at least 100 over 20. So
Okay.
that's something that we want to flag.
All right, because we were thinking the line extension program where, you know, my local cable provider that's doing 25.3 stops 1/8 of a mile from my house. And last year we did grants to get that out, but also knowing that if it's copper cable that's going to the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, so I guess the issue here is that the money we allocated in the CRF pool of capital that we've been allocating in the last 18 months, that would allow this type of spending.
Yes.
The Treasury
Okay.
guidelines for how ARPA money can be spent would not allow
Requires
this.
100. If you're doing 120, might as well do 100. Okay.
So anyway, again, this is something that I think we've got to just address.
Yeah.
On page 21, and it's the same change as on page 23, we eliminated transmission from the utility discussion. And this is on page 21 and on 23. And the reason for that is just some sensitivity, understandably, on Velco's, from Velco's standpoint. The fiber that Velco has is fiber that was built with funding that came from regional sources. And Velco's fiber really stands out there as a it's for resiliency for the regional grid. And I think there's some concern on Velco's part that this is looking at the possibility that we're going to be using that regional resource for local and state purposes. And I think Velco, I can't speak for Velco, but I think they very much have an interest in being part of the solution here. But being called out that this, that in this bill that this resource is going to be used for that, I think is problematic, probably from ISO New England's standpoint.
Okay.
So that was why, we caught that.
Okay, and I think that went in because we wanted to just make sure that it could be part of the discussion. So Senator Pearson, I think this was.
Yeah, I feel
your
pretty
idea.
strongly about this. Maria, may I just ask a council a question? Would we read 6 as the Senate had it as any kind of requirement that the owner open it up? Because the way I see this as it's sort of make sure the CUDs understand the map and what that may mean. I mean, if you look at Northeast, the Kingdom CUD is massive. I mean, it covers counties, several counties. And so there may well be a potential saving but I don't read anything in this that says Velco has to open it up. We just want to at least understand it where it is.
I think maybe this should be a committee discussion and we'll see if we can find somebody from Velco. I think we wanted to make sure that it was acknowledged that they had fiber out there and if possible, I also understand that ISO New England is not, it's a little staid. And I can see where they would be a little concerned about our hijacking something that they look at as part of their backup system. So I think we need.
What's a good word, Madam Chair? Maria, are we enabling hijacking in any sense to your read?
I think that's, we just need to talk to them and see if nobody's saying no. I think it's just how it's written.
Yeah, and
so
I
we'll
would
see
just
if
say,
we-
I don't know if we have to resolve this now. I just want to call this out as a potential issue and have heard from Velco on it. So
I think the only
I don't
thing
di-
I've
I don't
heard is
disagree with
it's
you,
high
Senator Pearson.
wire, high voltage, very dangerous fiber to work on.
Well,
So
I'll continue with my high wire
Yeah.
act here.
Yeah.
And the next page is page 25. It's just a typo. I think this referenced the wrong section. Page 20, bottom of page 26 and top of
Tim.
page 20. Oh, I'm sorry.
Also one on section 6, the title, there is a spelling error there. Just department is misspelled. If we.
Yes. Thank you.
That.
Got it.
Okay. I mean, that's what happens when you're drafting things in the middle of the night.
On
and
Sunday
your
night.
eyes are crossing.
Exactly. Thank you. Bottom of
Okay.
page 26, top of page 27. We decided not to have Maria draft this whole section. This was actually something that was in the House bill. So it's language we could drop in. We would offer to have the Connectivity Initiative program included here and under the umbrella of the board's powers to manage. And the reason is we don't want to have kind of various, and this is the major one, but kind of broadband connectivity programs kind of floating around state government. This is one. And if we are going to be empowering a community broadband board to be doing this work, the Connectivity Initiative should be included in that work. There's currently, we heard testimony back in February or March, in the neighborhood of $2 million left in the Connectivity Initiative now that hasn't been expended. It's possibly a lower number now. And as I'd mentioned earlier, the Connectivity Initiative gets in the neighborhood of $800,000 or $900,000 at the current run rate. And Madam Chair, as you had mentioned, that number is declining over time. But we would recommend that this program be moved over into the board's bailiwick and be included with that, the funding source that goes with it.
Okay.
So that's what this is. There is language to go with this from the
Okay.
House bill.
Fine.
And I think we're getting down to the short strokes now. In the VITA program, which is on page 32, we had replaced the word community with municipality.
Okay.
We're in section 9 in A. Also at the top of page 33, this wasn't highlighted, but it needs to be changed as well. But in C1, the word community appears, it should be municipality on the 4th line. And at the bottom of page 33, we changed the date to June 1st. I think this conforms with the some date changes that you made in the Senate bill. And a section that you added, I can't remember if it was in committee or on the floor, section 19, at the bottom of page 39, and on into page 40. We haven't gone through this with Maria, but we did speak about it. That, you know, there's some questions as to whether this section was retroactive for easements that are currently in place or only for future easements. And I think, I don't want to put words in the senator's mouths, but I think this was meant to be a retroactive change for easements that are currently in place. And Maria, I'm going to quickly get over my skis in talking about this, but
I think we were over our skis. This came to us very late. And I can't remember us discussing if it was proactive or retroactive. So we would definitely take a look at that. That was Senator Bray's amendment, I believe.
I'm not sure if it does much if it's only prospective. It does a lot if it's.
Retro, okay.
Yeah, I'll just jump in as a former utility person. If you're only dealing with new easements, you're dealing with very few poles. I think the intent
Okay.
here is that almost all of the poles that would be getting fiber strung on them already are there. And so this needs to be.
They're stringing it through my backyard as we
That's right.
speak. No one's asked me if they can go out there any more than they asked me if they can cut all my trees down. They just do it. But I can see that if somebody thought fiber optics was sending out rays or other things, that there would be an issue. Okay.
So I apologize, Senator Brock, for not getting through this in 30 minutes.
Actually, his
Quite
other
all right.
chair said,
Saved me from economic development for half an hour, and I'm grateful.
I'll trade. I've got to go to health and welfare for 2 hours.
So those are the changes that we would propose. I don't know what the best kind of work stream is here to move forward. If you all want to huddle and we'll plan another meeting.
Yeah,
to come
we've
back
got
and
a huddle, and the hard part has been finding a time. I've got health and welfare from 12 to 2. Senator Pearson has a meeting from 2 to 3. So, and Senator Brock, you have rules at 1:30, but
Mhm.
we've got the racism is a public health crisis resolution to look at. I know we're not going to do that in health and welfare in less than 2 hours. So it
Madam
looks
Chair?
like 3.
For the 3 of us,
Yeah.
that would be great, if that's doable.
Okay.
We'll see if Faith can set that up, and then we'll let you know.
You want to put a
Maybe-
next meeting for this group on the calendar? Try and get that
Yeah,
on.
well, that's, if we make really good progress, we could do it really late this afternoon or at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I'm not available at 9 in the morning. I have another meeting.
Economic development. I may end up
Yeah.
with one too in health and
Yeah.
welfare.
I'm available
Uh,
this evening.
I would suggest we go late today.
Okay. You want to try 5 o'clock? Does that work?
That works for me.
That might
Yeah,
allow,
we may have at least a concept by then.
yeah. And bring that back. Okay. So we'll do this at 5. Then we aren't feeling rushed to do something in an hour. If we, okay, that works.
Good.
So Faith and I guess Matthew, if you guys can set that up and set us up for
Will do.
a side,
I'll set up a
Great.
3 o'clock and a 5 o'clock.
that's it. Okay.
All right.
Great.
Are you ready
Thank
to
you.
end live stream or?
Live stream, and thank you, House members, for working, and Maria for working over the weekend.
Maria.
Yes,
Maria.
we're good. Maria wants us to go home too, so she can return.
Well, I'm frankly grateful for the 5 o'clock meeting today because I had planned to have lunch then, but I can put that off.
I have long ago, we in committee, sometimes the only time you get to eat is in committee.